You can advertise your business on Night Dreams Talk Radio, and you will be heard worldwide. Why not contact us at nightdreamstalkradio@gmail.com. You are listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio Network, from our compound to you worldwide, with your host, Gary Anderson.
Well, that's me most of the time, unless you're a bill collector, then who knows what name I'll come up with. Hey, tonight we got a great guest on, repeated guest. He's been on several times before. It's Olav Phillips. We're going to be talking, about, Space Force, Nazis out in space. We're going to be talking about national parks, people missing. Are they being abducted by UFOs? Well, hey, Olav, how you doing here tonight, my friend?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I am doing good. The last time we talked, I was near my deathbed, but guess what? I recovered.
You bounced back.
Well, the insurance company didn't want me to croak right then.
Yeah, it's bad for their actuary table.
Now, hey, you you run a podcast with a friend. You want to tell everybody what your podcast is?
Sure. It's the Paranoia Podcast. We call it the best amateur hour podcast on the internet. We try to do it once a week. We take little breaks to do research and other stuff. We have some very interesting guests on, and that'll blow your mind. We had Hercules Invictus talking to Grecian gods, and we had the Geos on from Truth Frequency Radio talking about some ayahuasca experiments they did in the Great Pyramid, which was really mind blowing. And Dr. Richard Allen Miller, that was a show to be heard. Nick Redfern, we've got all kinds of people on.
Oh, wow.
And we just talk and chit chat and figure stuff out.
Well, it sounds like fun. And you were doing it for a long time, and then you took a little break from it, and now you're back on, if I understand right.
Yeah, we took a break for about 6 or 8 months to do paranoia stuff, and then we got right back at it. It's not our day job, so, sometimes we have to take breaks, but, we try to be as consistent as we can for as long as we can.
Yeah, it kind of gets hard, even doing like a daily show, 5 nights a week, you kind of like, oh boy, what subject am I going to talk about next? Or, or what is my guest going to talk about? Then if you book a guest and they were supposed to be talking about, let's say we're talking about UFOs, but they come on and instead of talking about UFOs, they want to talk about fairies. And I'm not talking about the ship, the cars go on. We're talking about the little people, and you're not prepared for it because everything you prepared for in front of you was nothing to do with fairies. So you just kind of wing it through.
I personally have a rule for the podcast. I do almost no preparation. I've found that the most interesting things happen to me if I don't plan it. So, I've adopted, over the last couple of years, I've adopted a kind of mentality of I just show up and go with it. And, it cuts down on my research time, but I found that it actually works out really well for me, at least on the podcast. Well, because people, they go in weird directions, so I just go with it.
Well, what I hate is when you get a guest on, right, and they send you a script, It's a movie, or a book, and they want you to ask these like 50 questions, one right after another, and make it sound like you are as a host are asking the questions. And you know what? When I get those on, I give the guests two options before they come on the air. One is we forget about the scripts. If you don't want to forget about the scripts, I'll find somebody to replace you and bring them on.
Nobody's ever done that to us. We know pretty much the people that are coming on, so it hasn't been a problem. But I think that if anybody ever sent me a script, I'd probably send it back to them and go, okay, and then I just wouldn't use it.
Yeah, or you can do
it's not fun.
No, I got burnt one time. Me and Michael Hawley was co-hosting a show with me, and we got burnt one time really, really good. And I vowed after that no more. And, in fact, if somebody starts in, I'll purposely interrupt them all through with their little script of the, what they're saying, and ask them questions to throw them off.
That's mean.
That's mean, but it makes it more interesting, because who wants to listen to something that is they're doing as a guest? It sounds like they're reading a story out of a book.
Yeah, it's not fun.
No.
The beauty of shows like yours, and some of the podcasts that I frequent, that, it's the dynamicness of it. It's the conversation of it. I think that's what makes it interesting for me as the guest. Because, when you're a guest on a show like this, right, you have a couple of options. One is that, you can go into it with a predetermined plan, and, you're there to push a book, or you're there to push a podcast, or you're there to push a movie, or you can just kind of wing it. So I tend to wing it, because if I come into something with no expectations, then I can't be disappointed. So, no matter what you ask me, I always tell people when they ask me, what do you want to talk about? I'm like, I don't know. What do you want to talk about?
I noticed that.
Ask me anything.
I noticed that. And that makes it kind of refreshing, And also, I want to say before we get into this, after my show is over tonight, people, tune in at 9 o'clock to my friend Dave Scott's show on Space Out Radio, and pick up on his show after mine's over. But, hey, he's a cool guy up in British Columbia, and I'll tell you, be nice to him, because he's been shoveling a lot of snow lately.
He has. And if you can stay up until 11:30 Pacific, you can hear the wacky news with Olav Phillips.
Okay, I have actually heard it. That is kind of cool. Now.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, hey, we can talk about anything. It's my show, and you're my guest.
No, I was going to say that, I scour the internet for the wackiest news I can find, and he has a policy. I always have to include at least one story that starts a Florida man. So we always have a Florida man story.
I won't even ask why, but maybe I will ask him one of these days.
Funny. It's funny.
It's different. Now, I got to ask you a question. The Space Force.
Okay.
Now, I have a strong feeling that we've had one for a long time. And I think what's going on right now is kind of like a cover-up for it. But, I don't, whatever he's trying to do right now, cover up or not cover up, I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I would argue to you that the secret space program, as we kind of understand it directionally, right? Because, in conspiracy stuff, you never really know everything. You only know what you can find, or what they'll tell you, or what they'll allow to be released. And I would argue to you that the genesis of the secret space program was way back, close to 200 years ago. But yeah, I don't know what his motivation was to announce the Space Force. I don't know if he read somewhere about something. Well, he doesn't read, but if he heard somewhere about a secret space program and he wanted to try to brand it, Trumpify it. But after he announced it, the Pentagon looked at him like he was crazy. The DoD was like, well, it takes an act of Congress to create a new branch of the military. And, our Congress and our House and Senate, they can't seem to get anything done at all. So, they're definitely not going to create another branch of the military.
Or fund it,
the
too.
Air Force was, the Air Force was pretty pissed off about it, because the Air Force is, they're like, hey, that's our scene. We have all these launch pads, we do all these satellites and, and whatever. So they weren't very happy either. But since it was announced, I've yet to see anything materialize from it. I think they just the DOD just kind of blew it off.
Well, yeah. And right now, too, if it went up to the Congress right now for funding, the way the new Congress feels about, I hate to say it, I'll be honest with you. I was for Trump at the start because I really didn't have much of a choice. But at this point now, people just don't understand what might happen here, and probably will happen in the next month or two. I mean, the economy's about ready to take a shit, and it is going to dump. And it's already, like Apple announced today that their profits are way down. And a whole bunch of other corporations, are probably biting their nails right now to say the same thing. So the credibility of our president right now is not there. So if he tried to even get a Space Force going, if they won't pay for his fence, right? Are they going to spend money we don't have to create a Space Force, which we probably already do have?
For me personally, I tend to stay away from politics because, it's a no-win scenario, right?
You can't win.
No matter what I say, I'm going to upset half the people that listen to you. I will say this. I didn't vote for the guy. I didn't want him. Reality stars as president just don't click for me. But he definitely has a huge credibility gap, and a lot of the movements that he's made around NATO and our allies are not good. And the economy, the amazing economy we're supposed to have doesn't look like it's doing so hot. So, funding a new branch of the military is most likely not going to happen.
Wow.
Plus, we already have it. So, what's the point?
Well, the thing is, I was just reading the Air Force, right? Most of the jets we have, the aircraft, and the Air Force is older than the pilots. And what they're doing is going to the boneyards, constantly scavenging parts just to keep what we have flying. And that's scary.
Some of the aircraft we have are very old, like the B-52, but it's been revisited so many times. I think they're like on the P or the Q variant of the B-52. So they keep upgrading the avionics, and because, frankly, they just haven't come up with something that works better. But yeah, I think they put a lot of money into the drones, and I think a lot of the conventional stuff, like, fighters or whatever, they didn't put as much effort into, because the wars that we've been fighting, they fight them with drones. And no matter how you feel about that, video game warfare or whatever, it's the way they've been doing it. And I don't suspect that there's going to be a large scale war, anytime in the future where we're going to need, bazillions of tanks. So they don't invest in it. No,
they actually recycle the tanks and rebuild them. So, this they keep them going for another, few years. And I don't know. It's interesting. I just think
But everybody does.
Yeah.
Everybody does that, though. Like the Russians, up until the 90s, I think the late 90s, they were using the T-72. Well, the T-72, it's from 72, So they used the T-72 for everything that the Soviets did up until the 90s, and then they rolled out the T-90, but they're still using T-72s. A lot of these satellite countries, like Poland or, the Czech Republic, they had bought T-72s off the Soviets at the time because they were independent countries, and they're still using them.
Well,
so, nobody's really upgraded any of that stuff very well.
Well, you know what? Some of the South American countries were still using, you ready for this? Sherman tanks from World War II